are live. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And of course, there are no classrooms right now. All of you are stuck at home. So whether it's our live families, live teachers, or our groups joining in on YouTube, we so appreciate you continuing to tune in as we highlight amazing science and exploration around the world. Before we dive in with our speaker, I want to make a big announcement, and I'll highlight it again later in the presentation, but not this weekend, but the next weekend, the 22nd through 24th of May, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants is hosting our first ever Global Biodiversity Festival. Over 40 presentations, all in support of 6 amazing charities doing conservation work across the globe. We so hope you can join us. You can register on the site, and I will link it in the chat bar. Now, our speaker today will actually be speaking during that presentation as well, which is super exciting. But we are joined live from Patagonia in southern Argentina, one of the most beautiful remote regions of the entire world, by Borboroglu, who is the head of the founder and president of the Global Penguin Society. So a lot of us might have seen March the Penguins, maybe Happy Feet in the past, especially for kids joining from home. But let's learn a little bit more about penguins and the diversity of them, what makes them so special, and why they're so important to protect. So I'm so excited to turn it over to Poppy. Thank you so much for joining us today, and take us away.
Thank you so much, Jesse, for that nice presentation. And hello, my friends. Welcome you all. As Jesse mentioned, I'm in the south of Argentina. That is the south extreme of South America. So the next stop here is Antarctica, where, as you know, many penguins live there. So most people think that there are only 3 or 4 species of penguins, and they all like ice, but that is not the case. And I'm going to show you here how many penguins there are, their characteristics, what are the problems they are facing, and how we are helping penguins in all the planet. So to get started, I'm going to share my screen now. So there we go. See there, you can see
Perfect.
The first slide. Excellent. So I want you to meet some of my friends, the penguins. And as Jesse mentioned, the most famous penguin species is the emperor penguin. They are very tall guys, and they live in Antarctica. They incubate the eggs during the winter. It's very cold there. The speed of the wind is really, really high. And as Jesse, let me see there, because he has been featured in some documentary films and also cartoons like Happy Feet and also the March of the Penguins. But there are other species of penguins that also live in Antarctica, and they like the ice. For example, the chinstrap penguin in the upper left of the screen, and then you have the gentoo penguin and the Adelie penguin. The Adelie is the one that has a little rock on the bill. And there are also some movies that you can take a look now if you are in lockdown. Sorry about that. So like Mr. Popper's Penguins is about a guy that lives with gentoo penguins in a flat in New York. That's kind of funny. And the most recent movie is the Disney nature movie called Penguins. It was launched last year, and it is about an Adelie penguin. And it is the story of a male called Steve. This is Steve. You cannot see me now. I'm going to show you later, Steve. You cannot. Can you see me as well?
We can see you. Yeah, you're in a little box in the top left, but Steve's pretty small in your hand, so we will get introduced to Steve later. That's awesome.
Okay. Okay. He's very eager to meet everybody that is online. So, and then we have other kinds of penguins, like this crazy guy with colorful crest called the northern rockhopper. They live on islands. Then you can see they look like aliens. Look at the eyes. They are red and orange bills. I love these guys as well. There are different, like 6 species of penguins that have these crazy crests on the head. Then like these ones as well, the Snare's penguins, very similar, but these guys, they only live in one small island in the south of New Zealand. That's the only place on the planet where they live. And then, as I told you, the emperor is the biggest one, but the smallest one is called little blue penguin, like the one that you can see now in the picture. They are only very short guys, 30 centimeters tall. They're very light, they're very nice, and they're kind of gray bluish. They live in Australia and also in New Zealand. So as you can see, there is a wide variety. There's a differences in size, in colors within the group of penguins, because there are, as I mentioned, 18 different species of penguins. They all live in the southern hemispheres. Penguins do not fly, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Then you have other penguins that are more black and white, like the Galapagos penguin. And this is very interesting because this is a tropical penguin. They live in the tropics. They live very far from Antarctica. And the population is very small, less than 2,000 pairs. And then, you have this other crested penguin. And I'm showing you this picture to show you why penguins are important and why we care about penguins. As you know, people have a emotional connection with penguins. We all love penguins, but we don't know that they are in trouble in most cases. Penguins are very special because they can reflect the conditions of the oceans where they live. When I study the penguins, I can realize quickly if there is a lack of food in the oceans, if they are not able to find enough fish for their chicks. And also, for example, if there is some problem with contamination in the ocean, like oil spill, I can see the penguins oiled on land. So the penguins are all the time like sampling, checking the ocean and coming back on land, and we can see what is happening there. That is why penguins are very important. And researchers like me, we use the penguin populations, the penguin colonies, to see what is going on out there in the ocean, in the places we don't see. So as I mentioned, there are 18 different species of penguins. They're separated in different categories, in colors, depending on the conservation condition. If they are in trouble, more in trouble, or less in trouble. So the ones that are more in trouble, they are in red. There are 5 species, the ones that you can see on top of the screen. Then you have others that are in trouble as well. They are called vulnerable, and they are orange. Then you have 3 that are considered near threatened, including the emperor penguin, the ones that Happy Feet, for example. And then you have other 5 species that are considered least concern. It doesn't mean that they don't have problems. It means that they have less problems than the other ones. The problems with the penguins in general is that they live in the ocean, but also on land. So they have threats, problems in both environments. Some species that only live in the ocean, they only have problems in the ocean, but penguins accumulate problems in both environments. That's why 55%, more than half of the 18 species are considered threatened. So to show you what we do, I am a researcher, but I also created an organization to help penguins in terms of conservation. It is called GPS, easy to remember, Global Penguin Society. And through this video, I'm going to show you what we do briefly.
Did you know that more than half of the species of penguins are considered threatened? They spend most of their lives swimming hundreds, even thousands of miles per year. They live in diverse habitats, from the cold ice of Antarctica and the South Pole to desert tropical coasts on the Galapagos Islands. Some of them even breed in the dense forests of New Zealand.
Cool.
Penguins are excellent indicators of the health and conditions of the oceans. They're warning us in their own language that the oceans are in trouble. Climate change, pollution, and mismanagement of fisheries have a negative impact on them. Global Penguin Society promotes the conservation of all 18 species of penguins through science, management, and education. It assesses the conservation status of populations through scientific studies, works with governments to create protected areas, and educates communities so people will value conservation and maintain a healthy marine coastal environment. You can be a part of saving these incredible creatures in the oceans they live in by supporting Global Penguin Society. It's time to listen to the penguins and commit to their conservation and the protection of the world's oceans.
Okay. Can you listen me again?
Yep, we can hear you.
Excellent. Perfect. So there we go. So as you could see in the video, the problem, and as I mentioned before, is that penguins, they live in two environments, the coast and the oceans, and that's why they have many problems. Some of the problems that the video show are related with climate change, and we read about that all the time. The penguins that live in Antarctica, they're affected by climate change because the ice is melting, and they depend on ice not only to feed because their food is near the ice, but also in places where they nest, where they build their nest. But in the places where I live and in other places in Africa, the climate change is also changing the environment. So in some areas, there is more rainfall, it rains more. And here where I live, we saw that in the last 50 years, there has been an increase. There are more rainfalls in moments where the chicks are small. And in those moments, as you can see in the picture, the penguins, they're not waterproof. So they get wet, and those storms, they come with very strong cold winds. So they die because they lose the body temperature. Another problem is the oil spills, as I mentioned, because penguins, they have all these feathers that keep them warm and keep them waterproof. But when they get oil, they lose the body temperature and they cannot go back into the ocean to eat. So they starve to death on the coast. One of the new problems that we are seeing now, we can talk about this later, is the plastic pollution. And this is a picture of a penguin that I found recently in one of the colonies I work. It's one hour away from where I am right now. And as you can see, it has a piece of a plastic bottle around the neck. And we are finding different kinds of plastics on the coast and in the nest of the penguins as well. Like, for example, this piece of a fishing net around a juvenile of a Magellanic penguin. One of the things that we do is we work in three things, as the video show. In science, we gather scientific information to know what kind of help penguins need and how to find a solution for the problems penguins have. So with that science, for example, we create protected areas. We protect areas where they nest with their chicks, or we protect the places where they fish. To do that, we put devices, as you can see in the picture. Do you see the red device on the back of this penguin? This is a Fiordland crested penguin from New Zealand. We work there as well. We put these devices and we track them to see where are the feeding routes, what routes do they use to get to the food, and where is the food. And then we see if there are problems, if they overlap with fishing activity, with oiling activities. And then we try to manage the area so penguins can satisfy their need, they can find their food, and human beings can also satisfy their needs. A way to coexist, to live together. So finally, to give you a quick example of what we do, in this image, you can see each line is the trip of each penguin. We put a device on the back of penguins, many penguins, as you can see, different colors. And these are all the places where they look for food in the ocean. And as you can see in the middle, they come back to the colony, their nest. So with this information, then we talk to the governments and we say, hey, this is the penguins, this is a place where the penguins are eating. So we need to protect this. And then we design, like the blue area, a protected area in the ocean to manage the navigation there, the oil activity, to limit the fishing activity. And that is a way to help the penguins. And we also protect the land where they nest, because the nest is very important for them. They spend 80% of their lives in the ocean, but the rest on land. So we need to protect the place where they're breeding their chicks. And we also gather information to protect the terrestrial land. So coming back to me, that was the end of the presentation. And quickly, I have a couple of minutes. I'm going to show you some of the gear that we use to work with the penguins. And one of the most typical things that we do is we weigh the penguins. We want to know how fat they are, because it is very important for a penguin to be fat, because in that way, they can have reserves to stay long times without eating and taking care of their chicks. So we weigh them. This is our volunteer. This is Steve, the one I mentioned before. So we use this kind of, stripe or band. We go like this. Of course, I need a volunteer because some penguins are friendly, but some others can be aggressive because they need to defend themselves from predators like pumas and foxes or other animals. So we go like this. You see this guy there, and then I'm going to stand up a little bit. Then we use this kind of, the scale. We put it like this, and then we go like this, you see? And the penguin is hanging there, and then I can determine the weight of the penguin. And that is very important, because if when they start the breeding season, if they are fat, it means that they're going to be able to go through the breeding season and breed chicks alive. Another thing that we use is penguins. They all look the same. In some studies, we need to identify them. So we put bands, bands, stainless steel, these specially designed bands for them, that these bands don't harm them. And that is a way to identify each individual and get the scientific information we need to help them. And of course, I got different things, like we mark the nests, because we check nests during 3 months to see how many chicks they were able to produce. And finally, I'm going to show you some of the pieces that I found, parts of penguins that I found on the colonies. And this is a flipper of a penguin, you see? Many million years ago, the ancestor of the penguins used to be a bird that could fly. But penguins, they lost the ability to fly in order to improve the ability to dive under the ocean. So the wings were transformed into flippers, Can you see this is very, very thin? And, when they are diving, they are flying under the water like this. And if you can see, every little piece here is a feather that is adapted. It has a specific shape to be able to help the penguins propel themselves and move quickly, because they really, really swim very and dive a lot. An emperor penguin, they can be under the ocean for 23 minutes. That is a lot. Consider that a human being, we can be, if we are trained, we can be under the ocean without breathing for 4 minutes. The emperor, 23. And the emperor, they can dive up to half a kilometer under the ocean, which is also a lot. And finally, I want to show you this thing that I found when we study the penguin colonies. Sometimes when they lay the eggs, sometimes the eggs are abandoned or the nests collapse. And after 1 or 2 months, we found eggs that are lost. They are not the chick. There's no chick there. So this is one of those eggs that are lost. This is an egg from a king penguin. A king penguin is the second largest penguin. It's a little bit smaller than the emperor penguin. And if you can see, I'm going to compare it with a normal chicken egg. So you can see and you can compare the difference in size. You see, there's when there's a chick there, there's a big chick in there. And I would say that this is like 4 chicken eggs, or 5 at least, because it has a lot of volume, you see. So, and finally, to finish this, I'm going to tell you something very interesting, and is that the feathers of the penguins, they keep them warm, but the problem, and the feathers do not allow the heat, does not allow the heat to come out of the body. But the mother and the father, the parents of the penguins, when they incubate the eggs, they need to transfer the heat to the egg. And the feathers, they don't allow that to happen. So in this part of the belly, they have something called a brood patch, where they don't have feathers. So the skin can touch the egg directly, so the chick can develop, And at the beginning of the season, sometimes the brood patch is very small, so the adults, they take the feathers out. So sometimes we see some little points of blood in the eggshell. It is not that they are hurt. It is just that they took on purpose some feathers to allow the heat to be transferred to the egg. So with that, I leave you, and I'm really happy to answer to all your questions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Pablo, for such an awesome presentation. That is the only presentation we've ever had and may ever had where a live stuffed animal gets weighed on screen. So thank you for that. That's a unique Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants experience. So we've got some live groups, and I love the enthusiasm looks on some of the kids' faces when you were showing some of that. It was awesome. And a whole bunch of people on YouTube from Virginia, from British Columbia, across Ontario and more. So a really diverse audience today. And for everyone on YouTube, just let me know where you're joining from. Share questions there. But what we're going to do is start by going to Miss Erickson in Stafford Springs, Connecticut. If you have a question on behalf of your class, just demute your own mic and come on up and go for it.
All right, thank you so much. So I have a question from Riley. She would like to know, how do penguins communicate?
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Thank you, Lynn. So the penguins, they do have different ways to vocalize, to express themselves, depending on the species. For example, a Magellanic penguin, the one I work with most, they are my neighbors here. So they use different kinds of vocalizations when they are calling the females, for example, or after they fight, because they fight a lot at the beginning of the season to protect their nests, because with the nest, they attract females, and the nest is the, can I say, it's a security. A good nest can secure that the chicks are going to survive. So after they fight, they vocalize, you know, and it's not like this, but it's similar to what I'm going to do now. They go like, huh, 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 and they go like, but you can imagine sometimes 200,000 penguins vocalizing like that at the same time. That is funny because when we are in the field work, we camp there and they wake up very early. And here in Patagonia, it gets early at 4 in the morning. So they start braying and you know, close to your tent, so they wake you up. So, and in some cases, they have other vocalizations, like when you have bachelors, like adults, males that were not able to find a partner. So they go like, huh, huh. So they all have different ways to vocalize. But that's a key question because it's the way the parents recognize their chicks with the vocalization. Because sometimes the chicks, when they are 2 months old, they can stay on land with other chicks and they form groups all together. And the parents go to the ocean and come back with the food. But the parents, they pay attention to the vocalization of the chicks to recognize which ones are their own chicks to feed only their own chicks. So that the vocalization is critical.
Fantastic. What a great answer. And I want to stress for people at home too, Pablo had mentioned a few fantastic movies that you guys can watch. Some nature documentaries too, British Broadcasting Corporation, things like Planet Earth, 7 Worlds, 1 Planet. You can see just the most amazing cinematography in the world of penguins in the field and doing this. And it's so cool. So I encourage you to check that out when we're done. All right. I want to go to the Lowe family joining us in Kansas. Let me just unmute your mic and you're good to go for a question.
Hello.
Hi.
We want to know how long do penguins live?
Yeah.
Excellent question. So it depends on what kind of penguins, but for example, a Magellanic penguin, the one that live here is black and white, they have 45 centimeters, is similar, little bigger than this guy. They live almost 35 years, which is a lot. And the way to identify how old they are is when we use the bands that I told you, because we band them when they are 1 year old. So we know exactly when they were born. Sometimes we go to the field with students that are 20, 21 years old, and the penguins are older, much older than them. So that's kind of funny. And some other species like this guy, this is an Adelie penguin from Antarctica. They live between 20, 25 years old. But that's a lot. That's still a lot for an animal of this size, because sometimes how many years they live, it is related to the size of the animal in general. So you don't expect these guys to live that long.
Yeah, great question, guys. All right, Beth Deer in Chesapeake Bay, Virginia, or Virginia Beach, Virginia, sorry, wants to know what are some of the adaptations that allow penguins to survive the harsh Antarctic winters?
Amazing question. So the feathers are really, really important because if you can, let me show you. I have a lot of things that you don't see here, but this is a strange, I don't know if you can imagine, this is a piece of a dry leather that I found, and you can see the feathers. You see the feathers there? So all the feathers have similar size and they are all kind of connected. They are overlapped one with the another one. And among the feathers, there is a layer of air, and the air keeps the body temperature high, keep the penguins warm. You know, like some special coats that we use, you know? And the thing is that when and maybe you saw that in other birds. When it's very cold, they kind of fluff out the feathers. So they have a bigger layer of air, so it keeps them warm. But that is a problem for the penguins, because when they dive, they have so much air that they wouldn't be able to dive. So pay attention when you see these movies and documentaries that Jesse mentioned, because when they just go into the ocean, you see like a string of air, you know? And that is because the penguins, when they jump into the ocean, they compress the feathers to eliminate that air. So then they are able to dive deeper and deeper. The other adaptation that they have in Antarctica is sometimes it's 50 degrees below 0 centigrades, and they are incubating their eggs. So they get all together and they move very slowly. So they share the time outside of the group. I don't know if I can explain this clearly in English. So they make a big group. Some of the animals are inside. They are protected by the other ones, so they are warm. But the ones that are in the outside, they are exposed to the wind. So they move, yeah. So they go like this very slowly, and they share the time inside protected and outside not protected. So that is amazing. And also they have a specific adaptation because they have the feet. And the feet, they don't have feathers, you know, and that is one of the places where they would lose a lot of temperature, but they don't, because they keep the temperature of the legs low, you know. So the blood, they have warm blood going to those places, but the warmth, the heat does not leave the body. That blood is hitting the cold blood that is coming out. So the temperature of the leg is always much lower than the rest of the body. And another adaptation that I love is that when you dive, you know, it's like the deeper you dive, there's more pressure in the ocean. It's like the water is pressing you, you know. So these guys, they dive so deep that they dive in the dark. Even if it's day, they go so deep that they go to places where there's no sun. So the eyeballs, their eyes are very big, just like owls. But if you have a big eyeball, if you go that deep, the pressure would collapse the eye, you know, it would go like. So they have a specific structure made of cartilaginous that avoids the eye from collapsing. That is very specific, but that is something that I love. I hope I could explain it clearly.
Beautiful. Pablo, all I want to say, and I think that our whole audience agrees with me, is that in our lives, if we're lucky enough to love something as much as you love penguins, it's a pretty good one. Oh, right. This is great. I want to go to Kilgore in Texas. So Nancy's family, if you guys have a question for us, come on up.
How can I help with the penguins, even though I don't live anywhere near?
Yeah, great question. So Poppy, if you didn't catch that, how can kids at home that don't live anywhere near penguins, how can they help with penguins and making sure they stay around?
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Nancy, for that. So it doesn't matter where you live, because sometimes you live far from the ocean, but you know, all the planet is very connected, the air, the water. So if you want to help penguins, there are many things that you can do today to help them. And one of the things is, for example, to try to reduce the use of what we call single-use plastics, things that are made on plastics and you only use them once. So do not, and then you discard them. Then that goes to the garbage, then it goes to the ocean, goes to a river, it goes to the environment, and it takes years and years to degrade. And sometimes we find a bottle of water on our penguins that has been floating and floating and coming maybe from far away. So one of the things is that try to slowly, don't get yourself crazy, but slowly tell your parents also try not to use so much plastics, and also to reduce do not waste anything, you know, do not waste food, do not waste light, water, because everything has a cost. to the planet. You know, it has a price for the planet to be produced. So don't waste anything. Just use what you need and leave the rest for the rest of the animals.
Yeah. It's something that comes up in all of our conservation presentations. And I mean, it fundamentally boils down to these two words: don't waste. Whatever that may be, use what you need. It's a beautiful sentiment. I'm so glad we got it. And so thank you so much for our student in Texas for sharing that question. All right, Lynette on YouTube wants to know, why do you work with penguins? What prompted you to get into this in the beginning? Was it a personal story? Why choose them?
Yeah, you know, my grandmother, she lived here in Patagonia 100 years ago, in 1920, 1930. And in those years, it was very common here to hunt sea lions. You know, they used to use the sea lions for oil, and elephant seals and penguins. But she loved nature, and she used to go with horses to the coast of Patagonia to visit them. And when I was 2 years old, she was telling me the stories of her visits. So she kind of transmitted me that love for nature. And the first time I went to a penguin colony and I was, you know, surrounded by a lot of penguins, I had a kind of very strong connection, and I realized I needed to help them. In those years, I was 31 years old ago. A lot of penguins died here due to oils. 40,000 penguins were dying per year here due to oil spills. So I used to collect them. So I was very motivated to help them. And then I decided to study, to go to the university, to have more tools to help them, to be more useful for the penguins. And then one thing brought to the other one. And then I realized that I needed to expand globally what I was doing here. And then we created the Global Penguin Society. And it's working, because we've been able to kind of protect 32 million acres of habitat for penguins. And we made a count, and we benefited like almost 2 million penguins so far. And one of the programs that we love is we take kids that live close to penguin colonies to visit them for the first time. Some kids live close, very close, but they've never been able. And we need the kids to love them, to know about their needs, because the kids then they grow up and they become decision makers, and they can benefit penguins. And some of the kids that we took, they are now like almost 25 years old, not kids anymore. And they have a role in conservation, you know, in the government, in science, in conservation. That is amazing. Yeah. So I love penguins. I don't know what to say.
Right, that's a beautiful answer. I love the story with your grandmother too. One thing I wanted to harp on, actually, you had asked in Texas about what you can do from home. One other thing you can do, and I know you weren't going to make this plug necessarily, for everyone, I've linked this in the YouTube chat bar and I've shared it with all our live groups, but go to globalpenguinsociety.org. You can see more of what Pablo is doing, and you can donate directly on the page. If you like the work that he's doing, if you want to see more about what that work around the world looks like, and contribute to it, you can do that right on their webpage, and I encourage you to do so. I couldn't go to a better cause. So we have time for a few more quick questions, guys. I'm excited. So I'm going to go to Alabama now. We have kids from everywhere today. To Ashley Shelton's group. So Ashley's group, if you guys have a question for us, you can hear me still, go for it.
My name's Caroline, and I want to know, what all do penguins eat?
Nice, Caroline.
Excellent, excellent. So since you have penguins in different places of the planet, they eat different things. Most of them, they like fish, you know, and they eat all kinds of fish, whatever goes into the mouth. And they look like as if they had a small beak, but when they open this, they can really swallow big fish. So they eat different kinds of fish, like sardines, anchovies, but they also like to eat small squid and octopus, sometimes shrimp. So it depends. And sometimes they change what they eat depending on what is available. So that is something that helps them. And of course, the penguins that live in Antarctica, they eat krill mainly, which is like a small shrimp, basically. Yeah. It's orange.
That's interesting. I actually, truthfully, I'd never heard that penguins ate krill in Antarctica, so I'm learning something new. That's fantastic. Thanks, Pablo.
Yeah, and that is very important, this question, because the pigmentation of the bill, or maybe the pictures that I showed you before, the eyes or the crest, it comes from the pigmentation of on what they eat. So from the krill, and so this is what Whatever they eat gives them color.
All right, we're going to take 2 more live questions, one from YouTube. So I'm going to go to Ms. Erickson again. If you have another question for us from one of your students, just demute your mic and go for it.
Yes, I do. Actually, I have a couple of questions. One from Adam. He wants to know how active are penguins on an average day? And then I have another one from Maddie. Like, how would you protect penguins? How do they protect each other, and what can we do? I know you mentioned recycling and things like that. What are some ways that we can protect them in Stafford when we're about an hour and a half from the ocean?
Yeah.
Right. So the first question was
how active are they on an average
how
day?
active? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they are more active early in the morning and late at night. So in the morning, some colonies, to give you an example, they have 400 hectares, like 400 blocks. So it's like a city, of penguins. So some penguins, they nest 1 kilometer far inland. So they walk all the way, they go to the ocean, 200 kilometers, get some food, and then come back. Most of them, they go early in the morning. So you see a big, it's like rush hour, literally. You have rush hour of penguins. They use like streets, and then they use main highways to go into the ocean. And then maybe you saw in the documentary films, all the penguins jumping together. Those are the highways because they go in groups to look for food. And then when they come back, we don't know yet how, but they know how to get to their nest. And some of them, they come back to the same nest for 15 or 17 years, and then most of them, they come late at night when it is very hot, at least in this, because here it gets hot in the summer. Almost sometimes we get over 40 degrees. At noon, they're very calm. They stay calm in the shadow. They dig burrows under the ground, so they're very deep, no sun exposure, and one thing that I just remember is that, since they love their nests, they tend to meet the same partner year after year. And some penguins, they breed together, and we follow them together for 17 years breeding together. So that's why we say they are monogamous, because they stay together during several seasons.
Yeah. And then I know you did cover sort of how we can protect them. And a lot of it does boil down to things like don't waste, don't put plastic in the ocean. Is there anything we can do for keeping their food stocks healthy, or for climate change in general, which is affecting a lot of penguins? Is there anything that jumps out?
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that since we have a lot of kids in the audience and some schools, I believe that the kids are not the future. They are there. I mean, they're now. Conservation is right now, and they're perfect environmental policemen. So they can control their parents somehow and educate them. Why are you doing this? Why don't we, try to use the car less, try to go use more bicycle, try to do activities that we know that try not to do activities that we know that are harming the planet. And another thing is that kids have a very important role in terms of communication. Talk to your friends, tell your friends about the nature, about how to love and respect your bird, your tree, your park. That helps a lot, because the planet is very big and we are almost 8 billion people. If each kid can make a little difference, imagine there are so many kids on the planet that kids can rule.
Yeah. And it's something, I love that you said all this. It's something we've been highlighting in a lot of our conservation programs lately. I think a lot of people assumed it was going to be my generation that was going to be the big pushers for great stuff. And it's not. It's the generation that are literally watching this presentation. It's 16-year-olds and under. And so there's the lesson from Poppy. Kids, you can control your parents and make them do good environmental things. So get on that, guys. But we really, it's a fantastic message. Thank you so much. All right. We're good. Oh, Poppy, did you have something to add?
No, I was going to say only that when I was young, nobody was talking about the environment. It was not like right now. And the new generations, you don't need to be a biologist to work in conservation. You can be a lawyer, you can be whatever, an engineer. It's just about how you do things. You can keep on building whatever, doing what you love, but trying to respect nature, and reduce the impact that you have on the planet. So it doesn't mean that you have to be a researcher or a biologist. We all have a role in conservation. I always like to say, each one of us, we have a hero, a conservation hero within us. We have to wake him up, because we all can do a lot, no matter where we live, no matter what we do in our life.
Bobby, before we wrap up, there's just 2 more questions I want to ask. One is from online, and then one's one we always ask. So the one from online is, this might be hard for you. Do you have a favorite part of your job?
So I love to be on the colonies. I love to be among penguins. When I have something that I have to decide, I have to go to a penguin colony. I promise I'm not talking to them. I don't talk to penguins, but there's a special energy that gives me clarity of mind, on the ocean, everything. And I love, the favorite part is when we take the kids, hundreds of kids, to visit penguins for the first time. That is amazing. And sometimes I say, well, we can have the next president in this group of kids. Who knows, Of course, when I started, I did more research. Now I do a lot of policy. I have to work with congressmen, with politicians, because I want to make have a long-term impact, and that is creation of protected areas, things that will last even after I die. So that's what I dedicate a lot of time right now.
Outstanding. And I love this message of taking people out into nature to experience it. So for our groups that, as I said, they might never see a penguin in the wild outside of a zoo. They might never, they're too far from the ocean to even see it. So whatever the wildlife is near you, get out and experience it. This can be something as simple as going to parks regularly in your neighborhood and soaking it in, like listening to bird calls, being around trees. Whatever that may be, that sort of personal connection is a really, really powerful thing, and will inspire you not just conserve the areas around you, but be more globally minded when you're thinking about how you're going to drive to work instead of maybe bike, or the plastic that you don't need to use. All these things tie together really nicely, and I love that message. So this has been a lot of fun. Poppy, our problem with this session is that we have more questions than we can possibly answer in the time we have for the session. And so for our families live at home, for our teachers, for people on YouTube, where can people go to learn more about you, the work that you're doing, and about the Global Penguin Society?
Excellent. So we are everywhere. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and our website is globalpenguinsociety.org, or, well, Global Penguin Society on Instagram. My personal email is globalpenguinsociety@gmail.com. So you can write me, and I'm a very good email answerer.
See, direct. Not many of our speakers give that sort of direct contact, and I really love that. So for our families, globalpenguinsociety@gmail.com, and people can email you and ask any more questions they might have. That's fantastic, and I have a feeling your inbox is going to be inundated by the end of today.
Yeah. Yes, and we need a lot of followers on Instagram, because we publish funny videos. I go to the colony and I publish videos online about chicks hatching, amazing things. So it's going to be great fun for you to follow us on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you before we wrap up and we get everyone to say a big thank you, I'm going to do something at the end of this session that I've only done once before in the history of this program. I'm going straight to your site, and I'm going to donate some money to you guys, because it's some really fantastic work, and I encourage our other families to do that as well. Kudos to you for all you're doing. It's really impressive.
Thank you.
I love the
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, not just from me, and thank you. We're going to demute every group's microphone. So Ashley, Jack, Lynn, Nancy, if you guys could join me in saying a huge thank you to Poppy for joining us today. You are all now demuted. Go for it.
Thank
Thank
you
So much.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'll pass along that email to all our groups as well, so you guys can email them and keep the excitement going. And for now, thank you so much again, Poppy. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Oh, and say bye to Steve, everyone. Yes, bye, Steve.
Bye.
See you later, guys.